need either a whiteboard or something, get ready to type in the chat. And I am actually going to open the chat just so everyone can see and remind. I want to go over just a few of the rules that we've talked about up to this point. And we're not going to do it. We're just going to talk about it because we're going to put these rules into place more so this week. But we're going to take it up several notches. We're going to add in some powers, and we're going to do exponents, and we're going to take it up an even further notch, and we're going to do some order of operations. And so that's kind of where we're going with all of this. But first things first, what do you do with decimals? If you add and subtract decimals, what is the rule for adding and subtracting decimals? You can write it really fast on your whiteboard and hold it up, or you can type it in the chat. The chat is open. Type it in, chat is open now. You can type it in the chat, or you can write it and hold it up to the camera. What do you do when you add and subtract decimals? Yes, Andrea, you're the winner. You are the first person. Oh, there we go. I see the first whiteboard. Isabella, excellent. Thank you very much. Rosie, I see your whiteboards as well. Oh, Samuel, yep, I'm going back and forth from whiteboards to the chat. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Alyssa, and all of you who are participating. When you add and subtract decimals, the most important thing is line up the decimals. Very good. Next thing with decimals, what do you do when you multiply decimals? Multiply decimals. What do you do? How do you know? Yes, Eliana's the first one. There you go. Count, count, count. Make sure you count how many place values are behind the decimals. Thank you very much. Wow, look at all those. Count, count how many place values are behind the decimals. Yes, you guys are typing faster than you're writing. Although I see Alyssa enjoys using her whiteboard. I appreciate your answer, Alyssa. Very good. Count times 3. I love it. Count times 3. Count 3 times. Very good. Okay, next question about decimals. When you divide decimals, who remembers the rule for dividing decimals? Dividing decimals, where do you put the decimal? How do you know where to put the decimal? Move it. Yes, you got to move it, move it. Move it. You got to move it. If you have a decimal on the outside, you have a decimal on the inside, you got to move it, and bring it above the line. Move it and bring it above the line. That's right. Move it and move it, move it. Yes, thank you very much. Very good. There are also some rules of fractions, and I'm only going to go over 1 or 2 of these real quick, and then we're going to get into our exponents. For multiplying fractions, now where, Jonathan, that's unnecessary. Thank you very much. Once is enough. Multiplying fractions. Now we're moving into fractions. You remember top number over bottom number? There. What do you do when you multiply fractions? What do you do when you multiply fractions? Think about it. Think about it. Nope, you do not have to find a denominator. You do not have to find a common denominator. You don't have to flip anything. When you multiply, yes, Samuel, winner, Samuel. Thank you very much. It's good to have you back, Samuel. Samuel is back to us from a long time ago, and he is back now, and we are so happy to have him. Multiply, that's it. Multiply fractions. Multiply top times top to equal top, bottom times bottom equals bottom. And reduce if you can. You just reduce if you can. There you go. Multiplying fractions is one of the easiest things you can do with fractions. Just multiply straight across. Now, last thing that we've covered. What do you do when you divide fractions? What do you do when you divide fractions? Let's see who remembers division of fractions. Yes, Raya said it. Flip the second fraction only. Not both of them, just the second fraction. Flip the second. Make sure you only flip the second one. First one stays the same, flip the second one. What happens after you flip it? You divide? Oh, you guys are only giving half. Oh, there you go. Flip the second, then multiply. Shunashi, that is the full answer. Flip the second, then multiply. Flip the second one, then multiply. Right, okay. Now we're gonna put some of these rules into practice, but of course, I'm gonna have to give you some more information. I'm gonna go ahead and shut down the chat for a few minutes. It's only gonna go to host. So if you have a question for me, you can send it directly to me and I'd be happy to check that after the lesson. Remember, if you put this into a view where you can see my whiteboard, I'm going to flip my video over to a whiteboard so that you can see what I'm talking about today. Today, we're going to be talking about powers or exponents. Now, in fifth grade, you may have gotten an exponent that looks something like this. All right, in fifth grade, does anyone remember this in fifth grade? You can just nod your head. Just nod your head if you remember these from fifth grade. This is called the base number. The big number is the base number. This number 10 is a base number. That means that's the big number that we're going to be working with. However, the small number up top is called the exponent. So you have the base number and you have an exponent, okay? And this tells us what we're going to do. The exponent tells you what you're going to do with the base number, okay? 10 to the second power, 10 to the second power means, and sometimes we call exponents powers, okay? Because it means you have to make 10 times 10. You're going to write the base number 2 times, okay? The base number 2 times, but you multiply them. So 10 to the second power is 10 times 10 or 100. Okay, and in fifth grade, you would have learned about multiples of tens, 10 to multiple powers, because you learned that there is a pattern that develops. If I said 10 to the fifth power or 10 with the exponent of 5, that means you would take 10 times itself 5 whole times. And yes, you would actually have to write that out 5 times. 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 again is 1,000, times 10 again, you got to bring it down, you got to keep multiplying it. It's 10,000 and it keeps going. One more time, you still have times one more 10, giving you 100,000. Now, the cool thing, I think it's cool, whenever you multiply tens times a power or times an exponent, you can actually count the number of zeros. So this is kind of a shortcut. It's a 1 followed by 5 zeros. And if you notice, 10 to the fifth power equals 1 followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. That's kind of a shortcut when you're multiplying powers of 10. However, I'm going somewhere with this, so follow me just for a second. There's a couple of rules that I want to show you about. So if you have 10 to the second power, that's 1 followed by 2 zeros. 10 to the third power, 1 followed by 3 zeros, okay? Because that's the same thing as 2 tens or 3 tens, okay? Here's a question for you. I'm gonna write it in a different color so I didn't get too mixed up here. All right, how about 10 to the first power? Write it on your whiteboard, 10 to the first power, or you can put it in the chat. The chat's only gonna come to me, so no one else is gonna see it. Yep. 10 to the first power, yes, you're exactly right. You only have 1 10 or a 1 followed by 1 0. So a 10 to the first power is just plain old 10. One more question for you. 10 to the 0 power. 10 to the 0 power. Ooh, oh, I saw one person. 2 people got it right. 3 people got it right. This one is tricky. Anything to the 0 power, and this is a rule, anything to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. 1 followed by 0 zeros, okay? 1 followed by 0 zeros. And I'm going to show you another reason why 10 or anything to the 0 power equals 1. Oh yeah, it makes sense. That's what you were thinking. That's awesome. Totally got it. Yes, you did. All right. Now we're going to do a couple of exponent numbers, the exponent problems here. And I'm gonna start off with a little chart. Okay, here's a chart. Now I'm going to say, here we go. Let's go this way. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, I can almost see my chart. There we go. There's my quick chart. 2 to the second power, 2 to the third power. And I'm going to do one more. 2 to the fourth power. All right. 2 to the second power. Okay, you can do it on your whiteboard or you can do it in your in the chat. I'm all about it. 2 to the second power. Remember, this small 2 tells you how many times you write the big 2. Okay, so the small 2 tells you how many times to write the big 2. Basically, it's 2 times 2. Still not showing my, there we go. Yes, yes, yes. Those of you who wrote it down, the answer is 4. Okay. Now I have 2 to the third power. Okay, 2 to the third power basically means 2 times 2 times 2. No, the answer is not 6. No, that's a big, huge mistake. A lot of people make the same mistake. 2 times 2 times 2. Here's how I show my work. 2 times 2 is 4. I haven't used this times 2 yet, so I'm bringing it down. Now I have 4 times 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. Yes. Oh yeah, here we go. Yep, it's getting harder, getting harder. Okay, here we go. Let's take another one. 2 to the fourth power. 2 to the fourth power means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Yes, you have to write it 4 times. There you go. Now you're getting the hang of it. Now you're getting the hang of it. Yes, 2 times 2 is 4. And here's how I like to write this. I show you here on the side. There's 4 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. Here's another 2 times 2 is 4. But you haven't used this multiplication sign yet. Now 4 times 4 is indeed 16. Anybody starting to see the pattern forming here? See the pattern? Now I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Back it up a little bit. 2 to the first power. See if you can figure it out from the pattern that's forming here. Yes, there you go. 2 to the first power. Anything to the first power is just itself. That means I only have one number 2. Therefore, my answer is 2. Very good. Very good. All right, I'm going to back it up one more time because I have one more slot right here. 2 to the 0 power. 2 to the 0 power. Oh, see if you can find it from the pattern that's forming here, this pattern that's developing going backwards here. If you're looking at the pattern, you start with 16. What's half of 16? 8. What's half of 8? 4. What's half of 4? 2. What's half of 2? Yes, half of 2 is 1. There is a rule, okay? Rule for today. You must know this rule. I'm going to have you repeat it, okay? Any number to the 0 power, any number with a 0 exponent is always 1. It is always 1. All right? I want you all to say it. I want you to write it, and I want you to repeat after me without your without your volume on, but repeat it. Say, any number to the 0 power is always 1. Say it. Yes, okay, there you go. You type it in the chat for me so I know you're listening. There you go, thank you. Any number to the 0 power is always 1. Any number to the 0 power is always 1. Let me give you a couple more. Okay, here we go. There you go. Now I know you're listening. There it is. All right. Some people wrote it on their whiteboards. Any number to the 0 power is always 1. Okay, any number to the 0 power is always 1. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, those of you who are typing and writing and repeating. I see your mouths moving, and that's good enough for me. Okay, any number to the 0 power is always 1. Okay, There you go. Thank you very much. Now, this gets even more fun when you get into larger numbers. All right. I'm just going to give you a few whole numbers for today, just to practice a little bit. Let's start off. I'm going to give you some problems here. Let's go with 3 to the third power. 3 to the third power. Oh, using mental math and it's trying your brain, write it down. You don't have to do this all in your head. You can write it down, absolutely. Yes, 3 to the third power, absolutely. Ooh, I love that you even showed your work. 3 to the third power, uh-oh, nope, got a couple wrong answers there. 3 times 3 times 3, okay? So this little 3 tells you how many times to write the base number, okay? Yes, thank you very much, Isabella. I appreciate your showing that work. 3 times 3 is 9, and you still have to bring down this times 3, which 9 times 3 is indeed 27. 9 times 3 is 27. Therefore, 3 to the third power is, final answer, 27. 3 to the third power, 27. Thank you very much. Yes, those of you who got 27, awesome. All right, couple more problems. I've got a whiteboard eraser here, make some space. Okay, how about, I'm gonna do 5 to the fourth power. 5 to the fourth power. Yeah, better not use that brain power. No, Aubrey, that is incorrect. Bethany, that's incorrect. Jacob, that's incorrect. 5 to the fourth power means, I'm going to get you started. 5 times 5 times, write it out 4 times. 5 times 5, because this little 4 right here says you need 5 or 4 of these 5s. Nope, haven't gotten anyone with the right answer yet. What's 5 times 5? 25. What's this 5 times 5? 25. You still haven't used another multiplication. You still have to multiply 25 times 25. This will take you a little while. Yes, I got some people with the right answers now. Oh, boyski. Yep, there you go. Now it's right. Now it's better. Aubrey, still not quite there yet. 25 times 25. Don't do it in your head. No, Kendallin, that is incorrect. Typo, okay. Yeah, Sophia, nope. 25 times 25. Oh, boyski. Let's do this. I'm going to write this one out because we're having too many incorrect answers. 25 times 25. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 more is 12. This one's finished. Bring down the 0. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 more is 5. Add all that together. Final answer, 625. Yeah, don't try to do these in your head. Don't do them in your head. All right? You got to write them out. You got to solve them out. This is more complicated than what you think, okay? No guessing aloud, okay? You can't do these in your head. I'm going to give you a few more. This is, it's a Monday and you've been off for a week, so we got to remember how to do some math here. All right, how about 4 to the third power? 4 to the third power. 4 to the third. First of all, how many times do you have to write the number 4? How many times you multiplying the number 4? You multiply 4 3 times. And if you write it out, 4 times 4 times 4, then you can start multiplying. The first 2 4s, 4 times 4 is 16. Bring down the next 4 times 4. 16 times 4, there you go. Yes, I'm getting a lot more correct answers. Nathan, not quite yet, buddy. Okay, is definitely 64. Okay, so 16 times 4 is 64. All right, same thing as repeated multiplication. This is repeated multiplication. So you have these exponents. The exponents is repeating multiplication. All right, let's do, how about, let's see, I don't want to give you huge, ginormous numbers, but all right, I'm going to do it anyway. How about 3 to the 5th power? 3 to the 5th power. How many times are you multiplying 3? Write it out. Write it out. Don't guess. Write it out. 3 to the 5th power. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. There's 5 3s you have to multiply. This is 3 to the 5th power. Make sure you have 5 of them. Oh, there we go. Now I'm getting some right answers. There you go. Yeah. Better. Oh, good. Yes. Okay, fantastic. Again, 3 times 3 is 9. I like to bunch mine as many as I can. Another 3 times 3 is 9. I still have 9 times 9, and I still have times 3. I know 9 times 9 is 81, and I just write it down on below, and I still have to multiply by this 3. Bring it down. So if you have 81 times another 3, your final answer is 243. Yeah, 243. Oh my goodness. Don't have enough space. Okay, that's okay. We are going very, oh yeah, this is better. This is better. All right, but I have more problems. I want to make sure that you got this, okay? All right, let's do another one. How about 25 to the 0 power? 25 to the 0 power. Yes, there you go. Good job. No, Marina, that is not correct. Mia, your number is too big. Nope, nope. As another wrong answer than this. Aha. Always, anything to the 0 power always equals 1. That's right. Thank you, Eliana. Any number to the 0 power always equals 1. So there it is. All right. I have, let's see, I'm going to take it up even another notch because I don't want you to forget other things. This is going to be really mean, but I'm going to do it anyways. How about 0.6 to the 2nd power? Woohoo, got a decimal now. 0.6 to the 2nd power. The rule is the same. This exponent tells you how many times you have to multiply 0.6. But now I'm also bringing in your, oh no, I got all wrong answers. 0.6 times 0.6. First of all, what's 6 times 6? 36. Good, thank you. And how many decimal places, how many digits are behind the decimal? 2, 1, 2. Oh my goodness. I think there were a lot of, nope, a lot of brains that just exploded right there. Okay, I'm gonna do another one. Wait, what? Yeah, exactly. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna do a different one. How about 0.4 to the 2nd power? There you go, 0.4 to the 2nd power. Last brain cell stopped working, okay. That's better. Okay, yes, there you go. 0.4 times 0.4 does equal 4 times 4 is 16, and you have those 2 digits behind the decimal giving you 0.16. Very good. All right, let's do a couple more just to make sure you really got this. How about Now you're getting the hang of it. Okay. How about, I'm going to make it a little different. 3 to the second power. 0.3 to the second power. Now this is all about decimal placement. Be careful. Decimal placement. That means you have 0.3 times 0.3. Oh, I got two people with the right answer so far. So 3 times 3 is 9. You still have 2 digits behind the decimal. 1, 2, point, 0.9. 2 digits behind the decimal. 0.09. Brooklyn, you got your decimal in the wrong spot there, dear. All right. Yeah. Oops. 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 I put 6. That's a common mistake. People who write just try to multiply the exponent times the base number. Let's see. I'm going to give you, just because we're warming up and I'm feeling feisty today. I'm going to say, how about this fraction? 1/2 to the second power. 1/2 to the second power. And I put this in parentheses because the power goes to the entire fraction. Why? Because I told you I'm taking it up a notch. Aubrey Jones, you are the first person to get it correct. 1/2 to the second power means you have 1/2 times 1/2. 1/2 times 1/2. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Your final answer is 1/4. Oh, I told you we were going to use your previous lessons to really take it up a notch. Oh, yes. Oh, I see. Now I get it. Okay, good. So we're going to do some more then. Again, this is the first time that you've seen, if probably some of you guys, first time you've ever seen exponents. So we're going to take it nice and slow. I'm not going to give you heavy duty math today. I'm going to just give you this practice here. And let's do a couple more because you're starting to get it. Your life is so much better now for knowing this. You're hilarious, Isabella. All right. How about 2/3 to the second power? Go. Gotta just multiply. Oh, typo. I think there was a typo up there earlier. All right. Yes, 2/3 times 2/3 is indeed, so because you wrote it twice, that's what the little exponent said too, is 4/9. There you have it. Yes, you guys are getting this. Good. You just have to know that 3 times 3 is 9, not 6. Okay, let's do, I'm going to throw another one at you. Ooh, this is getting fun. Yes, yes, it is getting fun. I'm enjoying myself a lot. How about 1/3 to the third power? Ooh. Oh, yes, your brain cells are being pushed to the max. Oh, no. Kaya, check that top number. If you have 3 1/3, 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3. What's 1 times 1 times 1? 1. What's 3 times 3? 9 times 3, 27. Oh, 1/27th, 1/27th. Oh, mamma mia. All right, you guys are probably, yes, there you go. I'm liking the interaction that I'm getting here. All right, let's do some more. I'm going to give you 1.2 to the second power. Going back to a decimal. You hear this silent, silent cheers. I hear your silent cheering. Yeah. 1.2 to the second power. Be cautious of where you put the decimal. Ooh, yes, Brooklyn, you got it right. And Drake got it right. All right, first things first. How many times do you multiply 1.2? Yes, 2 times. 1.2 times 1.2. And if you know 12 times 12 is 144, but you have 1, 2, 2 digits behind the decimal, leaving you 1.44. Final answer, 1.44. There you go. Jaden, you forgot a 4. All right. Woohoo. Boy, howdy. This was a lot of information really coming at you really fast from Monday. And you thinking you got it. I'm going to give you about, let's do 3 more problems and then I'm going to move on. Okay. All right. How about a basic whole number? How about 7 to the 3rd power? Go. Basic whole number, back to the whole number, just to make sure you remember what the power means, what the exponent means to do. Lucian, no. Anya, not quite. So far, so good. Tristan, no. Isabella, no. Christopher, no. You are not multiplying 7 times 3. No, the answer is not 21. No, no, no. The answer is very large. 7 times 7 times 7. This 3 tells you you have to multiply 7 multiplied by itself 3 times. 7 times 7. The first 7s are 49. Then you have to multiply it by 7 again because you have to use this 7 still. There you go. That's better. Yep, that's much better. Yes, final answer. Once you, nope, Maria Nez, you practice your multiplication, dear. Final answer, 343, 343. Okay. Yep. All right. 2 more, just basic whole numbers. Let's go with 6 to the 4th power. And if you tell me it's 24, I'm going to break my computer. I mean, first of all, it's repeated multiplication. You have to multiply 6 4 times. That's a lot of work. You need your whiteboards. Nope, the answer is in the thousands. If you don't get an answer that's in the thousands, then you are incorrect. Yes, Jacob, you got it. Jesse got it. Dylan got it. Yes, yes, there you go. Rosie, Raya, you got it. Aubrey got it. Someone's doing the math. Kaya, Kendall, and Carlos. Woo-hoo. Christopher, keep going. That's only step 1. You got to keep multiplying. Tristan, you got it. Alyssa, Anya, you got it. Michael, you got it. Eliana, yes. Shinashi, Aaron. Okay, now for the final steps. Those of you who are working it out, 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. Ooh, that's a lot of 6s. It's 4 of them, because that's what the exponent is. It says you're multiplying 6 by itself 4 times. 6 times 6 is 36. And I have another 6 times 6 is 36. And you have to multiply those all together, because 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, that's going to give you a very large answer. Okay? You're getting it now. Some people like to do it this way, 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, and you can solve it. I like shortcuts. I like to chunk my numbers together where I can combine them. I know these first 2 6s equals 36, and these next 2 6s equals 36, but this multiplication in the middle still needs to come down. You may choose to just do this. 6 times 6 is 36, and you still have times 6 and times 6. And if you say 36 times 6 is 216, but you still have this times 6 to come down. Okay? And at the end, if you multiply 216 times 6, your final answer is 1,296. Okay? For all of you who got 1,296, no matter which way you solve it, you can take 36 times 36 and still get the same answer. Repeated multiplication. We're going to work more on this over the next few days, just so you get a better hang of it. And I honestly, I don't even want to put my assignment up for now, because I don't think we're quite ready for another assignment. We're going to do more practice on this tomorrow before I give you the assignment on it. So that is going to be it for me for math for today, just because that was a lot of information. We're just going to process that for the next several minutes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Trust you all had a wonderful fall break. So we're going to get into clarification statements today, and we'll talk about what that means here in a minute. In the meantime, your code for today, so joinpd.com is where we're headed. And today's code I will share with you on the screen here momentarily. And we're right here. So today's code is WIDSEY. And then we're going to do a little bit of review today, where we're going to talk about the 6 strategies that that we've been discussing so far, and why they're important. I recently finished a book called, let me find it here. It's called Writing to Learn. And the author, his name is William Zinsser. He wrote a book that most journalism schools have their students read. It's called On Writing Well. So in Writing to Learn, he sort of basically talks about the importance of writing, and how writing is important because it sort of helps us convey all of this important information about the world around us, but also how good writing is really good thinking. And that's, we spend a lot of time talking about the mechanics of writing, and make sure that an introductory paragraph has a hook, and it has a thesis statement, and it has quality reasons, and it has all these things. But it is, good writing and good thinking are very much synonymous with one another. So you have to have, where there's one, there is the other. If you are a fuzzy thinker, or you're not quite sure of the point that you want to communicate, that will very much come through in your writing. And so if you are super clear about what you're trying to communicate and how you're trying to communicate it, your audience will thank you forever and ever. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit today. We're going to talk specifically about clarification statements, which are really important in general. We're not going to talk about examples, and well, I'm going to give you one example of a science clarification statement. But clarification statements are really important when you start talking about science, history, any of the different content areas that that just require some vocabulary and some knowledge for sure. So we'll get started here in just a moment. Okay, so we're going to talk about clarification statements today. So what are, but before we do that, let's go back to what are the strategies that we've been talking about and that we should pay attention to while we're writing. The first one, of course, is quality reasons. So if we're looking at those middle 3 paragraphs of a 5-paragraph essay, we want to make sure that we're using quality reasons that aren't too similar. We want to make sure that each of those reasons is unique. We've talked about using varied transition words and phrases. Today, we're going to talk about clarification statements. Using personal examples is a very good and effective way of reaching your audience. And then, of course, making sure that we have well thought out openings that grab the reader's attention and that we have well thought out closings that sort of bundle all of our thoughts together or challenge the audience or just generally bring things to a close. So we've talked about 6 strategies or a majority of those 6 strategies, but I just wanted you to see all of those together at one time because we've just been unpacking them one at a time. So clarification statements, what are they? So let's start there. What is a clarification statement? So I want you to take a look at this particular paragraph. Mother Teresa was generous. In other words, she gave away more than most people. For example, when she met a beggar on the street, she gave him the last coins that she had. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose which of these statements do you think clarifies what's going on here. So we're going to talk specifically and in detail about what a clarification sentence is, but I kind of want to just see where we're at before we start. Which of these statements, which of these sentences do you think clarify? So go ahead and take just a moment. I'm fully not expecting you to get the correct answer. If you do, it's a bonus, good for you. But I want us to take a chance here and see if we can identify which of these statements clarify. Give us about another 30 seconds here. And clarification statements are great because they work for any type of writing. So they can work for narrative. They work particularly well for both expository and persuasive writing as well. So it's one of those things that isn't genre specific. You can use them and should use them in every type of writing. Okay, let's take a look. Interesting. Okay, good. The correct answer here is B. In other words, she gave away more than most people. And now I want to talk about why that is. All right. So Mother Teresa was generous. So what we have here is we have a global reason, and we have our topic sentence, which is broad enough to give us a little bit of room to operate. And then we have, in other words, she gave away more than most people. So whenever you see things like in other words, that is an indication of a clarification statement. So she was generous. Well, what do you mean by generous? Well, in other words, she gave away more than most people. So now when you see the for example, now we're providing examples or reasons of why she gave away, or why she gave away more than most people, or how she was generous. So Mother Teresa was generous. So in other words, she gave away more than most people. Well, how was she generous? For example, when she met a beggar on the street, she gave him the last 4 coins. So this last bit, this last sentence, now we're providing examples, and that's the difference. So sometimes you have to pause a little bit and pay attention to that. It's a pretty subtle difference, but once you start using these, it comes pretty clear pretty quickly. So what is a clarification statement? So let's talk about that for just a moment. It's simply a brief statement explaining what you mean, because sometimes you'll make a statement and it just needs further clarification. So, and again, if we're talking about something in science or social studies or you know, an area that requires a little bit of expertise, you're going to spend a lot of time writing clarification statements. So, like for instance, I'm reading another book right now called On Gravity, a brief tour of a weighty subject. So for some reason, I've been doing a lot of science reading lately, and I've really been interested in Einstein's theory of relativity. And it's one of those things that I've heard explained countless times, and I've just been trying to consume everything I can because I still don't really get it. So, but this author spends a lot of time writing clarification statements just because it's such a technical subject. So a clarification statement is just a brief statement explaining what you mean. Now, this is key. Now, the position of a clarification statement, it usually follows your thesis statement or global reason. So a clarification statement, you'll have your thesis statement or the global reason for your paragraph. Usually, not always, the clarification statement follows that, usually. Okay, so why do we need clarification statements? Why are we even spending any time talking about this? It's a good question. Your number one priority as a writer, as I've said from day one, is to be clear. You don't have to, there's a lot of now vocabulary is important, don't get me wrong, especially when you're writing in technical subjects, again, like history or science or anthropology or whatever the case may be. Your number one priority as a writer is to be clear. So you don't need to use 8-syllable words or big fancy words, especially when smaller ones will do. So your number one priority is to be clear. And that's where clarification statements really come in handy, because you have to assume, and again, another job as a writer is to assume that unless you're writing for a very specific audience, you have to assume that your audience doesn't know anything. And that's important as well. And then they're also very helpful, again, when you're writing about science, history, or anything technical. So breaking it down, again, like I wanted to do something a little bit more visual. So here we have our opinion, we have our reason. And this was the example that we looked at just a moment ago. Mother Teresa was generous. There's our global reason, there's our topic sentence. Then after that, here in the red box, we have the clarification statement. In other words, she gave away more than most people. And then below that, we have our example. For example, when she met a beggar on the street, she gave him the last coins that she had. So you'll notice this little note down here. Notice the location of the clarification statement. It is sandwiched between your topic sentence, or your global reason, and your example. So that is, again, sort of the typical location for clarification statement. Okay, so here's what I want you to do right now. You are going to write a clarification statement. So it is your turn. Saturday is the best day of the week because we have more freedom. This means, and then example, for instance, I may decide to sleep until 9 a.m. since I don't have to go to school. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to take about 2 minutes and I want you to write a clarification statement for this particular paragraph. So take a look at your topic sentence, your global reason. Saturday is the best day of the week because we have more freedom. This means. So clarify what you mean by more freedom. So Saturday is the best day of the week because we have more freedom. This means. So what does it mean to have more freedom on Saturday? Okay, and then you've got your example below it. So again, something new, something that we're trying out, just give me your best effort and we are good. So go ahead and I'll give you about two minutes. So I'll give you until 9:43 to write a response. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be complex. In fact, it should be neither of those things. So keep it brief, keep it simple. And then in another, about minute and a half or so, I'll show you what I wrote, and not that that is by any means the only thing that can be written, but it'll just give you a clearer example of what a clarification statement should look like. Okay, take another, I'm going to stop sharing here momentarily. Okay, take a look at some of these responses. This means I can sleep in, chill, and play outside. Very good, simple, effective. This means we don't have much work and we can do more of what we want to do. Beautifully done. That I can go on my electronics and sleep in, no homework too, that works. That Saturday is enjoyable for its lack of responsibilities, very good. This means staying up all night, sleeping in, and no school, all right. Job, Jocelyn. This means I don't have to worry about getting up or being late for school, good. This means we won't have to be forced to do schoolwork. This means we get to do whatever we want, very good. You can sleep in without being bothered to wake up for school. Okay, these are all speaking to me. All right, good, good, good. All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen here. Good, good job, guys. It's very, very good. We are very much on the right page here. So this is what I came up with. So Saturday is the best day of the week because we have more freedom. This means we get to choose what we do and when we do it, okay? So now, again, you'll notice that that is very similar to what many of you had written, which is great, which is fantastic. So good job there. All right. Okay, so let's continue. All right. All right. Okay.
Hey, what's up?
Let's do this. All right. We are going to do another one here. So your turn again. Donuts are not a good nutritional choice for a snack. Clarification statement. In other words, followed by our example, which is, for example, they are full of calories that can cause you to gain weight. However, they are probably the most delicious mistakes ever. and I will stand by that statement for sure. So donuts are not a good nutritional choice for a snack. In other words, okay, let's go ahead and write one more clarification statement there, and I will give you exactly, I'll give you 3 minutes altogether. So let's go ahead and work on those. Okay, so some of these here, in other words, a snack that is bad for your health. Good, Chloe. In other words, they are super delicious, but super bad for you. Donuts are good, but they aren't good for you. Nice. They don't have the minerals you need. In other words, donuts can make you fat. Yes, simple, to the point. In other words, they're unhealthy and bad for you. Perfect. You shall never know who wrote this. I disagree. I can tell who wrote this. In other words, they are filled with calories. In other words, you can have them once in a great while. Yes. So in other words, donuts equals a very unhealthy snack. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, nicely done. Nicely done, everybody. Okay, let me come back here, share the screen again. All right, beautifully done. You guys have the hang of this already. That's amazing. Okay, or at least the 67 of us who responded. All right, so let's move on. So this is what I came up with, and certainly not by no means the only option. In other words, they can be harmful to your health. And many of you expressed the same idea, just with different words, which is fine. You got the main idea, you got the big picture, and that's perfect. So put it all together. Donuts are not a good nutritional choice for a snack. In other words, they can be harmful to your health. For example, they are full of calories that can cause you to gain weight. So what I want to take a look, and this is an important distinction here. So stay with me because this is an important point. So you have your clarification statement. In other words, they can be harmful to your health. So it's important for us to provide some an example or examples after that clarification statement. So for example, they are full of calories. So how can it be harmful to your health? Well, they're full of calories and they can cause you to gain weight, which creates a host of other problems as well. But you have some examples there. So the clarification statement, well, this is what I mean by, donuts are not a good nutritional choice for a snack. They can be harmful to your health. they're full of calories, they can cause you to gain weight. So very sequential, you have your topic sentence, your clarification statement, your example. So this is an example that I just wanted to show you just real briefly. This is taken from the book that I'm reading right now, and I thought it was an appropriate example as far as the material is concerned. So to tell the story of gravity waves, which in order to understand Einstein's theory of relativity, you need to understand gravity waves, right? So to tell the story of gravity waves, let us first go for a quick tour of the universe. That's a pretty big topic. Matter consists of molecules, and molecules are built out of atoms. An atom consists of electrons whirling around a nucleus, which in turn consists of protons and neutrons, collectively known as nucleons. The nucleons are made of quarks. That's what we know. Okay, and then the author goes on to talk a little bit about what we don't know. And that's where the book really gets interesting for me. But this is it's a different strategy. Well, it's not a different strategy, it's a different tactic. So, but the author is spending time sort of like, in order for you to understand gravity waves, you have to understand how what matter is and how it works. And so he just spends time talking about, well, matter consists of molecules. Molecules are built out of atoms, and is just very simple and very sequential. So I thought that was a great example of a clarification statement. Okay, so here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to pretend, or maybe you don't have to pretend, but your friend was absent from class today. What would you say if you had to explain the lesson to your friend? So I will give you, I'll give you 5 minutes to do this. And then tomorrow, when we start class, there will be a quiz on today's lesson. So only 5 questions, won't be terribly difficult, but there will be a quiz tomorrow on clarification statements. And then tomorrow we're gonna take a look at well thought out openings. So we have touched on that previously, but we're gonna go back and dig a little bit deeper on how to open our writing. So as you're writing these, one final point: never leave anything to chance. And what I mean by that is you have to assume that your audience doesn't know. So never be afraid. Now, if you were a Nobel Prize winning physicist presenting to a bunch of other physicists and doctors and people who were accomplished in that field, then you are just going to assume that they know a lot of the vocabulary, certain ideas, certain concepts. But for the most part, you want to assume that your audience doesn't know. So spelling it out for them, I know there's some people who would find that offensive. It's not. You don't want your reader walking away with those types of questions, especially when it's like, well, I don't know what is that? I don't know what that is. And if they find themselves asking those types of questions multiple times within a page or two of your writing, then you're missing the mark as a writer. So always make sure that you spell things out for your audience. And that's why clarification statements are so important. Take another 2 minutes to finish up here. And then I'm going to read a quick example of sort of what I'm talking about. It's an article from the Christian Science Monitor, from their Humanity Behind the Headlines. And the headline is Bolivia cancels school year. Parents ask, what now? All right. All right, it looks like those people who have written, thank you, 53 of the 97. I don't know where the remaining people are, but for those of you who responded, thank you. So I'm going to read Bolivia cancels school year, parents ask what now? Just a first couple of paragraphs. 4 kids, 1 cell phone, no internet. That was the distance learning setup for Jose Luis Torres's family in Tolata, Bolivia, a town on the outskirts of La Paz at the start of the pandemic. We were blowing through our savings to buy phone credit, says Mrs. Torres, who runs a mechanic's garage. But in early August, not long after a neighbor helped Mr. Torres set up a Wi-Fi connection, Bolivia's Department of Education canceled the rest of the school year. Ever since schooling moved online last spring, just a month after classes started in the Southern Hemisphere, millions of Bolivians without access to the internet or electronic devices struggled to keep their children learning and engaged. The government argued that continuing digital classes through November, typically the end of the school year, was simply unrealistic, pointing to disagreements with the teachers union, its inability to provide universal education online, and the public health danger of in-person classes. Quote, just like any parent, our dream is for the kids to achieve more and go further than their parents, says Mr. Torres, whose children range from 4 to 12 years old. I always hoped they'd become professionals. After this, he says with a sad laugh, Bolivia's best hope may be for a generation of mediocre professionals. Okay, so again, you know, we have a problem canceling the school year. So what is going on as a result of that? So anyway, that is that. So it is rapidly approaching 10 o'clock. So we will go ahead. Teachers, is okay to take a break until 10:10?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay, all right, everybody. Go ahead. We'll break.
Something a little different. Ms. Digby, we're okay to go on, aren't we?
Yes, sir. You are clear for takeoff.
Okay. We're making a shift in our teaching today, whereas before we were learning about reading those texts that had to do with information. They were expository texts. Today we make a shift and we start looking at narrative texts, which narrative is another word for story. And we're going to look at that today. And I'm going to share my screen with you. And here we go. Narrative, okay? Now, if we're going to ask you what a narrative is, The whole thing is you just have to remember one word, and that's story. Anytime you say narrative, we're thinking about a story. Now, what is narrative? Let's think about this. See, just think of one narrative you have that you enjoy. And if we start thinking about what narrative is, if it's a story, then we can find narratives in books, and we can find narratives in cartoons. I don't know if you know who Tom and Jerry are, but that's one of my favorite cartoons. We can find it in movies. And here's one of my favorite movies right down here. Another one there, another one there. And we can find it in a multitude of different areas, of different expressions, of different forms of art. Okay? Oh, sorry. So what is narrative? Narrative is story. If you're thinking of a synonym for the word narrative, think of story. A story is a structure or type of communication that tells a series of related events that all lead to some result or lesson that the author wants you to understand. Okay? Narrative can be found in almost any art form: literature, poetry, cinema, that's movies or television, dance, music, song, video games. We all experience story all the time. That comes from the fact that it is a narrative. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. And I'm going to still share my screen, but not do it in the same way. There it is. I don't know what's happening. Hold on a second. Okay. I'm sorry about this. Mr. Mullen is clumsy sometimes. Okay, if we're going to talk about the two kinds, the major two kinds of reading that we look at in 6th and 5th grade, we're going to talk about narrative and expository. What is some words that you would use to describe expository? Okay, you might say information. You might say facts. You might say people or topics. You might say, what would you say? You see? If we were to do the same thing for narrative, we would do characters, which is a little different than people, isn't it? They are people, but it's different still. We might say a word that we're going to learn about: setting. We might say plot. We might say resolution. And we might say conflict. Okay? So in all of these things, there are some things which are shared. Okay? What would be some things that are shared? language, knowledge, right? Because we always have knowledge that we're building upon when we do these, when we know this. Experience. Okay. You see, our language, our knowledge, and our experience helps us to understand both the expository, when we're looking for information, when we're dealing with facts, where we're trying to come up with solutions to problems. Narrative, we use the same things, language, knowledge, experience, when we're dealing with characters and setting, goals and plot, resolution and conflict. These are things that are particular to narrative, but we use the same things to understand them. Language, knowledge, experience. Remember when we talked about expository, that one of our strategies for summarizing and for gaining more knowledge, more understanding, was the fact that we would make connections. We make connections with narrative as well. In fact, you're going to find that some of the very same strategies we use to increase our understanding when we're dealing with information are some of the same strategies that we will use with narrative. So, narrative and expository. The most significant difference between narrative and expository texts are their purposes. Narrative is normally is to entertain or teach, and expository is to inform and, yes, teach. Both can be used to persuade. So what's your favorite type of narrative book to read? I want you to tell me your favorite story. And I just want you to write down, this should be very, very quick, very, very simple, the book that you like. And I'm going to let you do that right now. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, no. You know what, guys? It's been a while. You know, guys, it's been a little bit a while since I've been with you and I've gone through this, and I made a mistake. You know what I did? Yeah. I did not get us on Pear Deck at the beginning. And so just use your whiteboards real quick. Write down on your whiteboard, you know, your favorite narrative, your favorite story. I just want to see some of the things that we're reading, because of all the things that we read, one of the things we most enjoy reading is stories. So go ahead and write that, then hold them up for me. Samuel, I can't read yours. Lift it up if you want me to see it. The Princess and the Pig. That's Kendallin. And Rayla, something about spoon. I read that. Wings of Fire. I like that book. That's good, Isabella. But No Elephants. Yep, that's a great story. Charlotte's Web. Destiny, that's a classic. Very good. Wonderful. Let's see, what are some of the other ones that you have and that you enjoy reading? It's It by Stephen King. Oh my gosh, that's a big book. I like The Diary of the Wimpy Kids, Percy Jackson. Yep, scary stories, any scary stories. Okay, Dork Diaries. Yeah, we like a lot of the series, don't we? But they all have good narratives in them, good stories. Just Jamie, Harry Potter, Narnia series, I love those. And Wonder. Yes, Lavisa, that's a great book, one of my favorite books of all. So, when we talk about narrative, we often think of it as one big, group of books, but in actuality, it's broken down into many different types of books. Sometimes we associate narrative with fiction, which is books that are constructed, that are written with imaginary characters facing imaginary goals, having imaginary goals, and facing imaginary problems. But in fact, there are many genres, including some within the narrative, that are actually nonfiction. Here's one about President Abraham Lincoln. It says, Lincoln Looks West, from the Mississippi to the Pacific. And it's a biography, and it's a historical book, okay? Some of the books are fantasy. Everything about them, the very world they're talking about, is made up. That is true of this book called The Fellowship of the Rings. The Outsiders is a realistic genre, realistic fiction. Myths, this is a book that talks about imaginary gods and goddesses and how they affect life here. One of the books that we will read before the year's out probably is Walk Two Moons, written by Sharon Creech. And it also is a realistic fiction. All Quiet on the Western Front, that is what we call historical fiction, because it is involved with very, very concrete historical circumstances, but the characters themselves are not historical. All of these have story. They are all narrative. Now, the one thing that is common to all narratives is that it has, and you're going to hear me say this over and over again, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Beginning, middle, and end. Sometimes I may even say BME, which means beginning, middle, end. And each one of those components, each one of those have different qualities, have a different mission, have a different purpose. And the beginning is all about what we will call the setting. The middle is all about what we will call the conflict. And the end is about the resolution or the solving of the problem or the conflict. So let's look at the beginning. Narrative typically starts by describing the setting, introducing the main characters, and giving the goal. It will often set the mood. It does this by answering these questions: who, when, where, what? Who, when, where, what? Okay? That's the beginning. The middle of the narrative typically describes the conflict or the problem that the main character is facing. In good stories, the problem usually gets worse before it gets better. We call this the escalation of the conflict. Okay? The problem will get worse, and it will get worse, and it may get worse again before it's finally solved or before it finally comes to an end. The end of any story, the end portion of most narratives, There is a resolution of the conflict. The problem is overcome, or the problem overcame the main character. Not all stories, remember this, are happy endings. Sometimes the problem wins, but the stories we like best, we tend to like best, is when the character, I misspelled character there, the character is overcomes the problem. If we were to give a narrative flow map of what a story would look like, it would be like this: beginning, middle, end. Notice it's a sequence, but the intensity of the story should be rising, rising, rising. And at the end, where the resolution is, right, should be at its highest point. Now, let me tell you, everything I'm telling you about narrative, it is a flexible genre. It is a flexible kind of text. And so there are many writers who will play with these very things that we see here, but this is very, very typical of what we will experience when we read these texts. Okay, stop share. And now we're going to read a story, okay? And in reading the story, we're going to pay attention to the beginning, middle, end. Okay, and this story comes from our literacy footprints. I'm going to show it to you. You do not have to pull it up yourself. And so let's go there. And good. And it's, again, this one comes from that anthology that we've been reading out of called What Made Me Sick. We're going to be reading in this for the next few days. And this one we're going to be reading from is a story. It's a narrative. The other two times we've read out of this book, they've been expository. But now we're going to read the story, Beetle Blisters. Okay? And I'm going to read it to you, and we're going to look. All we're doing is looking at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay? So here we are at the beginning. Last summer, I had to get my warts frozen. It won't hurt a bit, the nurse at the clinic said, as he dabbed the colorless liquid on my warts that bubbled and hissed. It's nitrogen, he said, a gas so cold it boils at room temperature. Your warts will vanish in no time. But it did hurt a lot, and my warts didn't vanish. Okay, let's stop right there. We've only read one paragraph and one sentence, and we have the setting established. Okay, who? Well, we don't know exactly her name, but we do know that she is a girl. Well, how do I know that? Well, because I'm looking at the picture, aren't I? Remember, we're always doing surveys. We're always being aware of what's around. This girl, if we were to say a time period, okay, who, what would be the next one. Who, what wouldn't be the time period. Who, what would be the problem or the goal? And her goal is to get rid of her warts that are on her skin. Okay? When? Well, just by looking at the picture and by reading it, it seems like this is modern time. Okay? And the problem, we're already introduced the problem, so we're starting to move into the middle, and we're only, one paragraph in. But it did hurt a lot, and my warts didn't vanish. For 3 days, my hand ached terribly. I couldn't write, I couldn't paint, and I couldn't sword fight with Trish. Trish was my very best friend. We did everything together. Unfortunately, Trish was also the one who gave me the warts on my right hand. And now I would have to make new friends because we were moving and I wasn't happy about it. The warts didn't go anywhere, but we were too busy moving for Mom to notice. By the time she did, school had already started in our new town. We'll get them treated again by our new doctor, she said. Don't worry. So we're in the middle of the story. We have a goal to get rid of the warts. And we're having problems, right? A conflict. The warts don't want to go away. They've been treated once and it did not work. We'll get them treated again by our new doctor, she said. Don't worry. I will not get my warts frozen again, I said. It was really painful and it didn't do anything at all. Don't you want to get rid of them, Lou? She asked. You might feel more comfortable. Mom was right. They were uncomfortable. They sprouted from the back of my right hand and they were incredibly itchy. But I didn't care, and I didn't care about making new friends either. I kept my warts hidden. Louise, why do you constantly hide your hand in your sleeve? Asked Mary Kay during science class. She always calls me Louise instead of Lou, even though I begged her not to. She's also class president and the smartest kid in 5th grade, or used to be anyway. Maybe she's cold, said Jason, who sits behind me in class. We play soccer together at recess sometimes. Why do you care anyways? Okay, everyone, said Mr. Miller. Let's get back to our science class, please. Who can name a tiny animal that floats in the ocean somewhere near the bottom of the food chain? Mary Kay's hand shot up and she wiggled eagerly in her seat. Mary Kay? Algae, she announced, looking around the classroom smugly. Good answer, but that's not right. That's not correct, said Mr. Miller. Mary Kay's face fell. Anyone else, he asked. I wanted to see if anyone else knew the answer, but no one did, so I raised my hand. Zooplankton, I said. We studied marine life at my old school. That's right, said Mr. Miller as he drew a picture of algae and zooplankton on the board so we could see the difference. Mary Kay made a sour face and rolled her eyes at me and then looked down at my hand. Ew, she exclaimed, pointing. Louise has warts. Everyone in the class turned to look at my hand, which had come out of my sleeve when I raised it. I hurriedly drew it back into my sleeve, but it was too late. That is so gross, Mary Kay said. After school, I told Mom what had happened and asked for her advice. I don't want to have these warts forever, I groaned. Everyone already sees me as the weird new kid. Mom patted me on the shoulder and said, let's go talk to the new doctor. Maybe there's something else they can do to get rid of those warts that won't hurt so much. Now, listen, we're in the middle. We're in the middle of the story. And remember how we talked that the middle is all about the conflict. And in this story, the conflict is about getting rid of the warts. And as time goes by, having the warts becomes more problematic. It becomes more intense that she wants to get rid of them. She wants to get rid of them because the kids see her as weird because she has warts, and it's not right, but it's the way it is. And so the intensity of her wanting to get rid of them is increasing. We call that the escalation of conflict. At the clinic, Dr. Lopez told me about a new remedy for warts. Fluid from the blister beetle, she said, holding a small vial of orange-colored liquid. Beetle juice? I asked. If Trish had been there, she'd have said, garul. That was a word we used when something was really gross and really cool at the same time. Yes, beetle juice, Dr. Lopez chuckled. And the nice part is that it doesn't hurt much. I was worried at first, but if it hurt like the first time, what if it hurt like the first time? But I wanted the warts gone. So I took a deep breath. Let's do it, I said. Dr. Lopez rubbed the top of my warts with a tiny piece of sandpaper until they were rough. And then using an eyedropper, squeezed a bead of fluid on top of each wart. Expect these to blister a little, she said, as she bandaged my hand. You may want to keep them covered for a while. The next day, as Mr. Miller reminded us about our upcoming science report, Mary Kay leaned over to Brittany Larson and said in a loud whisper, Louise is trying to hide her hideous warts. They giggled and looked back at me. Don't listen to them, said Jason, sitting behind me. Mary Kay, said Mr. Miller sternly, would you like to share something with the class? Mary Kay sat up primly and said, Brittany and I were just discussing my science presentation, which is going to be about birds. Mr. Miller looked pleased. Everyone knew his hobby was bird watching. Wonderful, he said. I'm glad you're prepared. Remember, everyone, be ready to give a presentation about your topic on Friday. At recess, I thought about my presentation on how plants get energy. It wasn't the most interesting subject, but I couldn't think of anything better. One of my warts started to itch, so I lifted the bandage for a peek. Look, right here. The problem is getting worse. The conflict is escalating. Whoa, underneath was the biggest, most disgusting blister I'd ever seen. A ball of pus the size of a grape was surrounded by a fiery red ring, and in the very center sat my wart, greenish and wrinkly like a rotten raisin on a bun. Garul, I whispered. I rebandaged the blister, then checked the others, which had become totally disgusting. My hand looked like a science experiment. Science experiment? Why hadn't I thought of it before? My presentation could be about warts. They were pretty fascinating. And when Mary Kay saw I wasn't afraid to talk about them, maybe she would stop teasing me. If I hurried, I could write a new speech and... Want to practice passing? Jason stood beside me with a soccer ball under his arm. I threw my hands behind my back quickly, hoping he hadn't seen the blisters. Sorry, I hurt my foot, I said, limping for a little for effect. I didn't like to lie, but I didn't want him to see my hand. I mean, a science report about warts was one thing, but showing him my disgusting blister was another. Oh, he said. He looked disappointed. I was glad when the bell rang before he could ask me anything else. I limped inside, feeling guilty, but relieved. On Friday, my blisters were even more disgusting, so I brought extra bandages to put them on before my presentation. Members of the class presented the reports, and I had to admit, Mary Kay's imitation of a red-breasted nuthatch's mating call was pretty good. She performed it several times to make sure everyone had an opportunity to admire her, and Mr. Miller thought it was splendid. Well done, Mary Kay, he said. After lunch, we'll hear from Holly, Jason, and Louise. I took the morning bandages off my blisters, washed my hands, and wrapped the warty one in the paper towel. But when I got back to the classroom, I made an unpleasant discovery. The new bandages were not in my desk. I shuffled through my papers, books, and pencils looking for them, but it was no use. Do you feel the problem, the conflict escalating? You see, it's getting worse and worse. I shut my desk, wondering what could have happened to them. I looked up and saw Mary Kay grinning at me. Lose something, she said. I was so nervous about standing in front of the class with giant pus-filled blisters that I hardly listened to Holly's report about butterflies. I peeked down at my hand. Fluid was oozing out of the wart on my third knuckle. When Holly was finished, I had to clap by slapping one hand against my thigh. Your turn, Louise, said Mr. Miller, pointing towards the front of the room. I awkwardly gathered my materials with my left hand while keeping the paper towel wrapped around my right. People giggled as I tried to put my poster on the easel one-handed. It took me a few attempts. My presentation, I said, clearing my throat, is about warts. The giggles became full-blown laughter, and Mary Kay's was the loudest. And suddenly, the whole warts presentation did not seem like such a good idea, but I began. Now, I really want you to see this and feel this, that as we read through the middle part of the story, the problem just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. The intensity of the problem, the conflict, is increasing. Throughout history, there have been many misconceptions about warts, I said. In some cultures, they were thought to be caused by witches, and a sure cure was to twirl a dead cat over your head at the end of a long rope. I had them mesmerized for a moment, And even Miss Mary Kay paused to consider the spinning cat. But warts are actually caused by a virus called HPV. As I talked, the class grew more interested, their eyes glued on me. Nobody even noticed that I kept one hand behind my back. Nobody but Mary Kay, that is. I continued. There are some new and unusual remedies for warts, like wrapping them in paper towels, she said, wrapping a piece of notebook paper around her own hand. The class started giggling again. I felt myself turning red. Worse, I felt a lump growing in my throat. Why did Mary Kay have to be so mean? What had I ever done to her? But Jason wasn't laughing. He was mouthing something that looks like, show her. And he pointed at his hand, show her. Did the paper towel cure work? Or do you need to borrow my cat? Mary Kay giggled, slapping her desk with her papered hand. Show her, Jason mouthed again. I stepped forward and held my hand just in front of her nose. Class became silent. Why don't you see for yourself, I said, whipping off the paper towel. Ew. Mary Kay pushed herself away from my festering blisters, her face pale. That's, but she didn't finish. Instead, she clapped her hand over her mouth as if she was going to be sick and rushed out of the room. That's, I continued smoothly, holding my hand out for everyone to see, the result of the latest and most revolutionary remedy for warts, the powdered wing casings of the blister beetle. Ooh, said the class. Disgustorific, said Jason. Everyone crowded forward for a better look, even Mr. Miller. The rest of my presentation went very well. Better yet, a few days later, my blisters and the warts beneath them had disappeared. So, here we are at the end of the story, aren't we? And what's the end of the story about? But the resolution, the solving of the problem. Jason and I play soccer every recess now, and though I still miss Trish, I'm not sad all the time anymore. When she visits this summer, the three of us, me, Trish, and Jason, are going to visit the mummy exhibit at the Natural History Museum. Oh, and Mary Kay is much friendlier these days. I wonder if it has anything to do with the enormous wart on her left thumb. And that's the end of the story. Now see, every story, every narrative has a beginning, middle, end. And each one of those parts, beginning, middle, end, has its own purpose in the structure of a narrative. And that's all we need to hear today. Friday, you're going to have a test. And in the meantime, you have a Quizlet that is posted in your classroom to help you review for it. Tomorrow, we're going to do a little bit of Jeopardy. Do you know how Jeopardy works? Jeopardy, whenever we play the game Jeopardy, I will, as a moderator, give you the answer. To get the points, you have to tell me the question. And we're going to do that with the words that are on, the 15 words that are part of our Vocabulary 3 list. That's on Quizlet. So today, until we're dismissed, until we go to our own classrooms, is it about time for that? Nope, not yet. But as we get close to that, you can go to Quizlet and you can work on that until this time. Okay? Ms. Digby, is there anything else we need to go over or need to